Hey, gang. Now that one tank is emptied and the other is refilled, let's continue with part two. Oh,
Great.
certainly. Absolutely. So, what do we do? Do we just continue this and make it a part two?
I
Or
think well, yes,
because we really haven't
because
discussed the other 8 episode spots?
no, you have mentioned it though.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it could
That's kind of what we're
technically
supposed to
be
do today.
part 2.
Well, yeah. So, the the message that I insert, in fact, it's the same one that I inserted on Phil Ripko's episode. Um, my my outgoing from episode one before going into or part one before going into part two, I
Okay.
say, well, Jane and I did it again. We continued talking before we even started the episode.
Yes, and that's what we have sort of done again today, but I think folks might be interested in, in hearing our chatter
Yep.
about the Grammys and certain other things. I think it was kind of an interesting conversation because we
Yeah.
skipped last week. So I was really eager to talk to you today. So
And I
there
guess
you
I'm
go.
sorry I missed the Grammys now, actually. I'm going to have to go back and actually watch at least I've always liked uh, the black girl who I mentioned earlier that I can't think of now. Um,
Tracy Chapman.
yes. Yes. I've always liked
Hmm.
her work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And
like,
Brandy Carlisle was on too. And I've always liked her work. So,
I don't know her.
um, yeah, she's got some special tunes that my kids really, that really resonate with my kids. So,
Country or pop?
I would say pop more than country.
Okay. Yeah, because
So,
I have a tough time with country. But
I mean,
between that one and Melody,
yeah, I fell in love with country music after I retired, on our way to Florida when Paul and I went to Florida in March.
yeah.
And I knew that he liked country music, so I listened. I was so pleased that he was driving all that way. I thought, okay, well, I'll listen to his music that he likes, and not that he's a super country fan, not at all. But I knew that probably in the South I might be able to catch some stations. So anyway, I forget, but I've become a real country fan. But my tastes are mostly country pop. Like I
Okay.
like
So I
Rascal
guess
Flats.
that's what Taylor Swift is. Is
Yeah,
she kind of a cross?
yeah, she's kind of a cross. She moved from country into pop. Or at least that's what she announced. I don't listen to
Okay.
enough of her music to know. I think I only have one album of hers, which I really enjoyed, but I haven't been. I Yeah, I listened to Adele.
Yeah.
Um, I really like, for a long time. I have most of their albums. Rascal Flats. I like Tim McGraw and his wife, whose name escapes me at this moment. That's terrible.
She's
But
also a
anyway,
singer.
yes, she's wonderful,
Yeah. And I
wonderful.
knew I knew it, but I forget what it is too.
Hmm.
But
Anyway, do we want to? I'm going to have to let you lead these discussions because
oh,
beyond
that's fine.
do we annoy you, and the tribute to 9/11, I don't remember what we talked about in Ramble On. I guess a little bit of nothing. I remember moral thanks, talking about Lawrence Kohlberg's theory of moral development. That's one of my favorite things to talk about anyway.
Yeah.
And I know that I enjoyed our several episodes that talked about toxic positivity. We went on for a number of episodes on that particular note. And of course, talking with David was also fun. So
So that's
anyway,
why on the Spotify analytics, I took a snapshot of a little bit more than just the top five. Uh,
mhm.
on on Spotify, our biggest one is 9/11, and that comes in on second place on YouTube. And the reason why I took both is because I constantly have this dilemma when I'm reverse engineering what I want to talk about on my own podcasts,
Mm-hmm.
because what does well on Spotify does not do well on YouTube.
Can you talk about that a little bit? What is received well on each of those uh, platforms?
I
Uh,
suspect that it has something to do with the fact that YouTube is visual. And while for
Oh,
me, Spotify is visual,
yeah.
I use video podcasting on Spotify. It's right now the only one in that distribution that as a hub sends any signal to. Everything else is audio. And so I
Okay.
suspect that if I'm using an overlay or some sort of visual,
Uh huh.
it relates well to the video audience,
Okay.
or relates better to the video audience than it does the audio only
So you
listeners.
don't think it has much to do with content?
No, because my creation is the same.
Mm, okay.
But it's possible because the demographics are different.
Okay. So
Spotify,
when you reverse engineer your episodes, what are you looking to do?
so up the middle, of course, is political. Although I've branched
Okay.
out in that to talk about people like, Paul Harvey, Howard Stern,
Mm-hmm.
some things that are helping me. I've got two scripts that I still have to do. Up the middle has really taken a back seat since the holidays
Mm-hmm.
because there's just so much happening with the radio.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've
You're
got
busy.
scripts.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. I've got scripts that detail information about what internet radio really is. And then
Okay.
the same thing for podcasting, and it gives a little bit of a history on both and how to acquire your favorite show and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Um, and there are differences because the demographic that uses each is different. That's why I started Yergz Radio in the first place, was to expand the audience for Up the Middle,
Okay.
because the internet radio audience is not necessarily the same as the podcast audience.
Okay.
Internet radio is a little bit more older and accustomed to radio,
Yeah. I
like
that makes sense to me. Yep.
every
Yep.
certain day at whatever time we got to tune in to
Yep.
listen to Jane's Doll.
Yep. Yep. That makes
They
sense
don't
to
get the
this old
fact that
person.
you can just press play on a
Right.
very similar application and get it
Right.
whenever you want.
Right. Right.
The
Right.
kids are all
Right.
over that.
Right. 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 The kids are all over signing up for apps. We older people are not so much. Yeah.
Well,
We'll
not
tune
only
into
that,
the radio.
but they're more tech savvy.
Well, yeah.
So,
Yes.
and when I say that the older crowd is more into the internet radio, just getting them from the FM or AM airwaves to listening to that same concept from the internet,
Absolutely.
that's a
Yep.
jump.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And that's a societal
Yes, it is.
accomplishment
Yes,
to get that
it
generation
is.
to make a move like that.
So it sounds to me, though, that looking at your future, you'll want to spend more time on Up the Middle than Yerkes Radio.
Or
To
the
spend more
shows that I
time with
started to be on
your
Yerg's
younger.
Radio, because that's what really is jumping. Up the Middle isn't going to the syndication yet. It's my
Okay.
radio show that is.
So can we assume that your older audience is grabbing you more energetically, shall we say, than the younger audience? I mean, I'm just generally
Well,
bullshitting.
when I learned that I'm attracted by a bunch of old white guys, um,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
it basically is
Yes.
the same experience I've always had in the locker room at the gym. Uh,
I'm, I'm sorry.
it's not necessarily who I was wanting.
I'm I'm really sorry about that.
So
Well, you've got all these work wives, you know?
yeah,
You've got all
yeah,
these work wives. How many do you have now? I know I am one, but I
three
know you
work
have at least
wives,
three, right? Three
three
work
work
wives.
wives, and now a work husband.
You have who's your work husband? No, who's your work
Glenn
husband?
Jackson, Sport Cat.
Oh
He's the
yes,
other
of
guy
course.
that
Yeah,
start
right.
and true to my legacy. He's some older white guy that I would not have normally been attracted to.
I'm sorry, Ross.
Story of
But
my life.
yeah, yeah. Well, we work wives really like you, so.
And I love all of you. This has been awesome. Uh, it still is awesome.
Yeah,
And like I said, it definitely gives me a much better reason to get up every day instead of lying in bed pitying myself.
yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Um, so
I
yeah,
wanted, yeah, I forget what I was going to talk to you about. Shoot.
well, you had
Okay.
something about Mel Roth too, right?
Well, yes, and that's the article I was working on and just finishing up when you reminded me that you and I had a date. So, yeah, I interviewed her for a podcast episode right before Christmas. And I shared with my audiences and with her at that time that she has been an inspiration to me since both she and I were little girls. I mean, I'm a couple years older than she is, but I recall seeing her on the stage of the old auditorium at Boyertown
So I didn't
during.
finish that episode,
Oh,
but I did
okay.
hear you say that part.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I actually think we need to dedicate the rest of this part two episode to that story.
Let's do
So
it.
let me rattle off something from Spotify that I think will tickle you about our standings, and then we'll
Okay.
finish up, with Mel.
Okay.
Those top five are, like I said, the 9/11 tribute was our very first episode. And to answer
Okay.
your question, yes, one of the reasons why it's doing well is because it's the oldest episode. But I think that's like a Christmas song. Next year in
Yes.
September, when that gets searched, 9/11, that's going to pop
Mhm.
up in people's searches.
Mhm.
Just like when Taylor Swift does a Christmas song every year, it's going to be
Mhm.
popular again.
Yep.
Um, then, do you remember our BS detector?
No.
I don't remember that either, but that's number 2 on Spotify.
Mm. Well, people probably liked the title.
Yeah.
Um,
Again, I think
and
it's
my
searchable.
guess is we were talking about conspiracy theories, and we were probably talking about how people could possibly still be supporting what's his name.
Yeah.
Um, I,
Yeah.
I would imagine we got a little political in that one. That would be my
Yeah.
guess. Because when I think of BS,
And
I think about him.
4 and 5 are political as well, but number 3, I put it out as an episode. It was a very short episode, but that is when we found the piano version of Both Sides Now, and I
Ah,
made a trailer into that as in addition to just the credits at the end of the episode.
right. Well, I remember
Uh,
from that episode. Our buddy Craig was still listening to us at that particular point and giving us some feedback. And, what I think he suggested, which still seems to be true, I was learning there. That's what it was. I was still trying to learn how to have a conversation instead of a lesson plan,
ah,
you know. And so I was initially pretty uncomfortable, just given my background, just chatting, without having a particular direction, without having a particular point or topic or theme or whatever. And so rambling on, I was still getting used to trying to do that. And
gotcha.
I think it was kind of a slap in our face to suggest that all we were doing for 30 minutes or 45 or an hour and a half or whatever we were doing was just kind of rambling about this, that, and the other thing. So that's what I that's what I assume was the content
Well, we've
of
got
that.
followers in our small town of Boyertown, so we got to be doing something right.
Well, yeah. And we kept promising, of course, that we were going to talk about the things that we were doing wrong, which we ultimately did in the episode called Annoying Something. Yeah. So
That
that was
was,
fun.
are we,
I
do we
enjoy
annoy you?
I totally
Do we
enjoyed
annoy
that.
you was number one on YouTube.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
rounding off Spotify was number four was Donna U Savage. That
Oh,
was our
okay.
first hour long episode. Was when we
Mhm.
interviewed Donna U Savage together. And
Okay.
then number five was the
Hmm.
Magic Wand.
Did I talk about that? I forgot. Yeah. And my daughter said, I don't think Ross liked that episode.
Oh no,
No,
I
that's not the one.
know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know the inspiration for that story because they were all
Yeah.
always friends of our family through slow pitch softball.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
The magician in that story and my dad played slow pitch softball together.
Yeah, that was a fun episode for me. I love talking about the magic wand. Yeah. That was
But then
good.
there was a three-way tie with getting there. I don't remember what that was. I mean, obviously we're almost reaching a goal or something. Um,
Mm.
now with album cover visual, that's when I added audio. Or I'm sorry, I took the audio and made video for YouTube.
Okay.
And then the third one in that group is the interview we did with David Beckmeyer. So
Okay.
those three are tied for sixth on Spotify.
Okay.
And then we already talked about YouTube. So back to Mel.
Oh, back
Yeah,
to Mel? Okay.
yep. Unless you had something else to add that, but
No,
I
no.
don't want to, I don't want
No,
to,
well, I wanted
skip
you to
you.
finish this look at our top episodes and some discussion about content and some discussion about where we want to go. And I guess I want to always mention that it is our mission to be positive. Can I say that? That's
Yeah,
still
and
true?
yeah, because that was accidental,
Hmm.
but it certainly fits with everything Yerg's Radio is doing,
Yep. Because
and it's starting to
initially,
take off.
initially, we had thought that both sides now would be more of a debate because we come
Right.
from different planets, as it were, in a variety of
Yeah.
different ways. And what we found was that we needed to modify our mission slightly. Even though we had to add that, even though we come from different planets, what we have found is that we share a lot more things, or we if we see things from a different way, it's still it still ends up in the same place. So anyway,
Yeah.
and that certainly is the mission of Be Inspired, my podcast, and also the mission of the Boyertown area expression, because what we are trying to do is focus on the positive things. And it is central to the project that Studio B Art Gallery is forwarding in this summer called I Am Proud to Be. And I just yesterday wrote a press release and created a flyer because we came up with, I'm so excited about this. We came up with a way to interact with the community during the I Am Proud project. And what we're going to ask people to do is send us photographs that in some way respond to the theme of I am proud. I mean, are you proud of your children or grandchildren? Are you proud of the house you built? Are you proud of, of the artwork you do? Are you proud of your grandfather who served valiantly in one world war or another, or Vietnam? What are you proud of? Your garden, a particular craft or project that you do. Anyway, so what we are going to do, what Building a Better Boyertown, Krista Gross, the event planner, and Ellen Martinetti, the Main Street manager, what they are going to do is put these photographs on a loop so that we can show it continually, either in the window of Studio B, so that people who walk by will see things that people are proud of within the community, and or we will, if it doesn't work out in the window so well, I don't know how all that bright sunlight will affect the flat screen TV in the window of Studio B during June, July, and August. It'll be in the studio as a way to showcase what our community is about, what they are proud of. Because what we are after always at Studio B, in the Boyertown Area Expression, and Be Inspired, is what I like to call community building. And that is, if the more we get to know one another, the more we recognize the things we have in common, the more we like each other for the most part. Okay. So
And
I'm
Phil
really
and I were a
excited about
perfect
that.
example of that. Phil
Pardon
and I
me?
were a perfect example of that. I thought that
Yes.
we were going to have a hockey game on Saturday, and while there were differences of opinion on certain things, it's still pretty much the same thought process,
Mm-hmm.
coming to occasionally different conclusions, but
Mm-hmm.
ultimately the important stuff, we're spot on with. So
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if maybe if you can temporarily tint the window at Studio B
Yeah.
to
I will ask
remove the
Sue to help me
glare.
with that. Yeah. Yeah. We'll try to
Yeah,
do something. Yeah. We'll try to do something. And people who are smarter than I am in those kinds of ways, I'm sure will come up with things. I'm always amazed at the talents and skills that people have that I know nothing about. So hopefully that will come true.
yeah,
But back to Mel Roth. Anyway,
yeah.
so Mel, as I said, when we were still both young girls, even though I'm a few years older than she is. I mean, I saw her on the stage of the Boyertown old, or what we fondly call the old auditorium. I saw her one afternoon or one evening in, I think, a dance recital. And I was, as a young girl, just blown away by the energy she radiated. It was magnetic. And the smile. And I mean, she was just magnificent. And I can remember sitting in the audience thinking, I want to be like that. So she's inspired me since I was a little girl. And I knew, I mean, she was friends of friends of mine, and she and I knew each other and recognized one another and would say hi and how are you and all that kind of thing throughout the decades. But I was so excited to sit down with her and actually learn what her lifetime journey was about. And so that's what the Be Inspired podcast, she filled me in on who she was. And so, I mean, after our conversation, and I'm going to get into that in a little while, but after our conversation, I wanted to create an article for the Boyertown Area Expression about her, because that's what I do with my podcast episodes. They become
Right.
articles for the news site. Anyway, so I sat down, I re-listened to our episode, our conversation. I took notes. I wrote an article. And it took me hours to put it together in a way that I felt okay about. But at the end of it, it was not what I wanted it to be. It was more chronological and kind of mediocre in the presentation. So I needed to let it sit for a little while, because what really came through in that episode was what Hamlet tells Horatio in Shakespeare's play. And that is that there's a special providence in the fall of a sparrow. That is, there is nothing that happens to us that God does not intend to happen to us. His hand, I mean, and I don't want to whatever that word is, anthropologically, present this, but I do believe there is a force beyond us that somehow,
Right.
and we've talked about this before, that somehow arranges people in our lives. I think, did I talk about on this episode when I was in England and lost? Did I ever
You
talk
have
about that?
before, not today,
Okay, good.
but you have
Okay.
before where
Okay.
somebody
So
just kind of
that's
appeared
that.
out of nowhere.
Right. And I will send people back to
Yeah.
a previous episode to listen to that. But I do believe there is a force there is a force, and that things happen for a reason, that old expression. But I do believe that. Anyway, what I really wanted to get across in my article about Mel, And I'm not sure I can do it to my own satisfaction, but I have tried again and rewritten the piece and centered it on what was probably centered it on an event in that family's life that turned their lives upside down. And that was their younger son's car accident,
Case.
that ended up in his being paralyzed. Now, this was a young man who was destined, and his goal was to pitch in Major League. And he had the energy that his mother had. He had the indomitable spirit that Amy Musapapa talked about, that everybody in town knew that he would get there, like Jimmy Devlin of the Patriots. He had it too.
Right.
Well,
Right.
Chase Roth had that same skill and ability and spirit that we all believed here in Boyertown. He would end up in the major leagues. And of course, I guess he was, driving home from a late night with a girlfriend or whatever and fell asleep at the wheel. The accident paralyzed him. And I will never forget. His father said at one point, because his father and I taught together at the high school, his father said at one point, you can buy them the safest cars that have the strongest seatbelts, but you can't make them use it. Broke everybody's heart.
Yeah.
I mean, not mine
Yeah.
singly. We were all traumatized by that. But part of her interview, go ahead.
What is his paralysis? What is he capable of using? What is he not able to use?
Well, I know that he's in a wheelchair and he can't get himself in and out of bed into his chair. But to be honest with you, I don't know if he's quadriplegic or if it's just his legs. I don't know. I should have asked.
Okay.
I did not. Okay.
That's all right.
But anyway, what I wanted to do was, I guess what I saw or heard in that conversation with her was the hand that the universe played in their lives all throughout. So I started really when I redid it the second time, kind of started with that life-changing moment that the family had, because one of the things that she said in the middle or even toward the end, I can't remember anymore, in the interview, was that she at one point had a conversation with Chase and said to him, you had a plan for your life. God had a different plan. And you're going to make a difference in people's lives by being in that chair.
Yeah.
And then she went on to talk about, how wonderful he is with his nieces and nephews, how close he is to his brother Chad. And she says, even that alone, the way he is with them, will change them in the way that they look at people with disabilities, special needs, people in a chair. It will change them. And they, as they go forth in their lives, will make a difference in other people's lives as well. She has said, and from every account I have heard throughout the decades, because it's been 24 years, I think, since his accident.
Wow.
By all accounts, and Mel's affirmation, he has never felt sorry for himself. That to me is unimaginable. I know how weak I am. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
But from all accounts and from her testimony, and I asked her, I said, at what point do you recognize his ability to be that? To be that. And she said, I can give you one example, one story that a nurse told at the rehab center, that possibly speaks to it as much as anything. In other words, it was instant, you know? She said that the nurse, when she was, she was in a particularly intimate position of having to give him a shower, help him get a shower or
Yeah.
whatever. And in doing that, she had the opportunity to ask him, what is it about you that is different? She said, because I, in my 17 years of nursing, have had other young people in your condition, in your situation. And yet, while they have had their friends come and visit them in rehab, their friends would come perhaps once and never again. She said to Chase, your friends come more than once, twice a week sometimes. And sometimes there are new faces, new people who come. What is it about you, do you think, that inspires that loyalty? And what he told her, and I guess was reported to Mel, was he said, if my friends don't have a good time when they come to see me, if they don't have a good laugh or two, if we don't do something fun, they'll never come again. So what did he learn? And what magic does he communicate to his friends and to all the people around him? And that is, it's not going to be sad. It's not going to be troublesome. It's not going to be boring. What he's going to do is, as Phil said on one of our last episodes, and as you alerted to in our opening comments today, maybe it was recorded, maybe not, but it's that quote from Maya Angelou. People won't remember what you say. They won't remember what you do. They're only going to remember how you make them feel. And
Right.
apparently Chase's friends felt valued, felt good, felt entertained, felt whatever in his presence. And my guess is that his students, because he is a teacher, or has been a teacher at Boyertown High School for over a decade. I don't know exactly how many years. And I believe
Wait, what?
he's being
Wait,
recruited.
wait, wait, wait. Chase?
Yes.
Chase is
Yes.
teaching?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes.
Wow,
In the
I never knew
technology
that.
department. I mean, he was in, I believe he was in junior high West for a while in their computer labs. Maybe I'm making that up from Bill Cherkasky. I can't remember, but he has been teaching in the Boyertown School District in the technology department, something with computers, helps with their computer department. But he's
Wow.
being, and I believe he's been teaching. Anyway, he's being recruited by other school districts out of Boyertown, and where he has, said no up until this point, I think he's being tempted to maybe switch. I don't know. But there's a lot in that that's inspiring. I mean,
Yeah,
and that,
absolutely.
yeah. And
And
Mel goes on yeah, go ahead.
that's why I've got to get you as one. That's why you are one of the shows from Yergz Radio that starting next week or week after, depending on the day, will be syndicated.
Oh,
Because it
wow.
doesn't matter that people outside of Boyertown have no idea who Melanie Roth is.
Mhm,
They know that story, and they need
mhm.
to know that they're not alone.
Yeah. There are many, many such stories. I mean, every single person whom I have conversation with for my Be Inspired podcast has a wonderful story to tell. And one of my favorite questions is always, when you were in high school, did you think you would be where you are today? And mostly
Yeah.
the answer is no, and that is inspiring in itself, because sometimes we get stuck thinking we have to be this, that, and the other thing. And what is so inspiring is knowing that just because we thought we would be this, for example, I mean, going back to Mel, for example, she said she always wanted to be a teacher,
I remember
but
that.
her earliest memories is that she fell in love with twirling twirling, and had her own inspiring person by the name of Linda Gresh, who inspired her to be this awesome twirler. And yet the opportunities she had in junior high and high school and in college to practice leadership skills, to learn how to form a team, to learn how to inspire people, led her to being invited, first of all, to teach aerobics and then swimming classes, and then be a child care manager of people at the YMCA, and then ultimately the assistant director, and then the director, and then a consultant for YMCAs all over the East Coast.
Yeah.
I mean, that all, and when she told the story to me in the podcast, I mean, at every turn, it was like she didn't know this was going to happen. These were not positions she sought. These were positions that someone else looking at her, as I did in the auditorium decades ago, looked at her and said, this is a special person who needs to be in a bigger position of leadership because she's got what it takes. She's got that spirit. She's got that charisma, that riz, right? Isn't that the word
Yeah.
these days? She's
Yeah.
got that riz. She's got that riz that will, that will take that will make whatever she happens to be doing successful. And I mean, she's still at it. I asked her, are you ever going to retire? And she said, I don't know what that means. And of course, part of the interview, suggests that she has, gone on to become a member of the board of directors for the local ambulance. She's been on church council. She's been at St. John's Lutheran Church. She's been the president of church council for 6 years or so. And so retirement does not look likely for her. And I just can't say enough about what an inspiration this particular woman has been to me throughout my life. Yeah. Anyway,
That's
so
awesome.
there, I did it. I talked
I've
about
known
Mel.
that family my whole life,
Mm-hmm.
mostly through, I don't know, I think Jean's a little bit older than Mel, but I know Mel
I
is
don't know.
somewhere around my
Yeah.
mom's age,
Yeah. I don't know.
um, because Mom and Mel and some other ladies in town are part of a card club,
Okay.
the ladies' night thing. And I know as a kid, I remember them, going back through yearbooks and
Mm-hmm.
laughing at this hairdo and laughing at that hairdo,
Mm-hmm.
and
That's always a fun thing to do.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, they were both references for me on my application to the Secret Service.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going and kind of sort of like interviewing them of sorts, saying, here's what's going to happen, here's who's going to come here, and uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was just talking to them was like a job application in and of itself for me.
Yeah. We need to
Uh,
talk about that in another episode. I'd like to know how that works. Yeah.
what, the hiring process?
Yeah. That might be
I don't
interesting to
know if it's
somebody.
really the same now. I know
Oh,
there's
okay.
some significant differences for now, but I know it's a background check is not or a security clearance is not an easy thing to acquire.
Right. Right. Right.
And
Right.
that's
Right.
why hiring is so difficult because there's so many people who can't pass either the polygraph and or the security clearance investigation. Something comes up that kicks them out.
Wow. That would be fun to know a few details that from back in the day, even though it's not the same in some regards.
Yeah,
But okay,
gladly.
so we have probably gone on here for a
Yeah,
little while,
we are at that time.
and I think that probably gives a nice way so that we are not boring our audiences by rambling on. A way
Yeah,
to
we don't want to
say,
do that.
no, we don't want to do that all the time. I'm Jane Stahl,
And I'm Yergz.
and this is both.
Season 1 of Both Sides Now.
Oh, this is it?
Yeah,
Wow.
this is the week we said. Yeah, as we would keep it consistent with when you
Be
make the
inspired.
change for Be Inspired.
That's really wow. And I'm looking at my calendar now. Yeah. It starts today. Yep.
Today's the day, gang.
You got it.
Wrapping up
Yep.
one.
Yep. Sounds good. Take
And with
care.
this
Have a
split,
good week.
the split, well, the one last note,
Okay.
the split
Yeah.
that this is doing today, the two parts for today and the two
Mhm.
parts that we got out of Phil Repko over the weekend. This
Mhm.
episode that we're wrapping up right now is episode number 50.
Wow. We've done a really great job.
Absolutely.
Take care, my friend.
All right, my
I'll
dear. I'll
see
see
you
you
next.
next week
Okay.
for
Have a good
season
week.
2.
Okay. Take care now.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.